Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Unsecurity podcast. I'm your host, Oscar Minks, and with me today is the always wonderful Brad Nye. Hey, Brad, how's it going, man?
Going well. It's finally warming up here. Nice. You can get outside, not
Heck
hurt the
yeah,
breathe.
nice. Yeah, what's the weather looking like for you guys? Thawing out. That's good.
Oh
Are
yeah,
you
it's
warm
going to
yet?
be a little rainy, but that's good for the plants and everything. So
Yeah.
I'll take mid 60s in rain over 30s in rain.
Oh, heck yeah. Mid 60s is perfect, man. That's where we're at right here, like high 60s. We're supposed to get some rain this evening as well, but my favorite time of the year is when we start to hit like the mid 60s, low 70s, and the nights are still, evenings are still cool, like 40s and
Yep.
50s. And these days are very short lived in the South, as I think they are for you guys in Minnesota as well. So I try to take full advantage of this time of
Yeah.
year.
Yep. Agree. So
Yeah. So what's
so
been happening, man, since we spoke a couple weeks ago?
I know. Well, you had your hackspace talk. I did a podcast yesterday for Pin Test Recruiter. Uh,
Nice, nice.
I'm not sure when that's going to come out yet, but yeah, we talked about it was good. It was focused on career and helping people and what can we do and kind of what we do here at FRSecure and uh, a little bit about our podcast. So it was a really fun hour. Went really fast.
Super cool. And for all of our listeners, what's the name of that podcast again?
Pen Test Recruiter.
Okay.
It's Thomas Richard on LinkedIn. So I'll
Okay.
make sure our social media gets links out once he publishes
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, you shared with me some of the information, and sounded like it was a fun experience, but also like a really structured interview type podcast, right? So, do we get a like peek into the mind of Brad and I throughout the
Yeah, yeah,
podcast?
yeah.
Yeah,
It is pretty much that. Like, hey, how
yeah,
did I get to where I'm at, and what were some experiences, and what advice do I have? And so it was really cool to it was very different than our podcast where it's just
hmm
going back and forth, but to be interviewed and do that, it was kind of interesting.
cool. Yeah, man. I look forward to listening to it. I'm sure a lot of our listeners here will probably tune in and give that a spin as well. So, excellent. Yeah, I've been so did the Hackspace Con a couple weeks ago. We had our friends who put that conference together on our last episode actually, and it was a fantastic conference. It was my first time at Kennedy Space Center, which was pretty cool. I didn't get to do all the things; was limited on some time. I did get to go check out the Saturn rocket though, and went through
Hmm.
that whole experience, and that was pretty cool. If you have you been there before?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Incredible.
the control room, remember that? You go into the control room and they simulate the launch and the walls are just banging. It was pretty fun. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. The kids loved the space shuttle cockpit that you could sit in and flip all the
Oh yeah.
switches. You know, may have sat in there and flipped switches.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I didn't do it this time, but I think I admitted to you before, like when I was at the Air and Space
Oh
Museum
yeah, yeah.
in DC. Oh heck yeah, I got in that cockpit and played around.
Yeah, you missed out. The Mars rover concept is just incredible to see. So
Yeah, and it's still there. I just didn't get time to do it all. Yeah, my
there's
day
just
was
so much.
busy. There was a ton. I mean, you could spend a couple days there to go through everything, I think.
Yep.
So,
So that's
yeah.
awesome. I'm glad everything went well down there.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Shout out to those guys again. They did a fantastic job, especially for a first time conference. Super cool venue. They had a packed lineup of speakers, and just again, great initiatives behind there. They donated so many certificates and did a lot of good community outreach. They were actually donating. It was even cool. I don't know if they mentioned this, but all their merch sales they were donating to a nonprofit organization.
Oh wow.
And so it's pretty cool. So I got the hat here, which I actually love this hat.
Hey, I like it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for our listeners only, it's just a hat that says Hackspace, and I'm kind of a hat collector. I've way too many hats as it is, so the last thing I ever need is one new hat.
Well,
But Seth, our
I
R&D
like
manager, and I always laugh because every time I go into a fly shop, I leave with another hat. Like
yeah.
I don't need it, but I just like cool hats.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, yeah, heck yeah, man. So how's work going for you? You guys still swamped with VRM?
We're finally slowly getting it under control.
Yeah.
It's getting better. We got, 5 or 6 people on a working group that are now kind of on their own.
hmm
Uh, handling it so it's not just me trying to
Yeah.
manage that. And obviously any new product, working through some hiccups and
Hmm.
getting good feedback for training others and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
it's going really well. VCSO stuff going really well, getting some really good interaction and work with some of my clients. So
Yeah.
it's fun.
Very
And
cool.
but it's been nice that now it's kind of slowed down. I've actually been able to pick up a little bit on some training again. So for 6 months I was just completely swamped with not able to do anything.
Hmm.
So I picked up on picking up on Python again.
Nice. Yeah.
So it's going
Yeah, I know
really
you
good.
started learning, kind of reinvesting time into Python last year, and things got
Yep.
pretty busy. So I'm happy to hear you're getting some time to focus on that again.
Yeah, it's kind of nice to be
Yeah,
able.
yeah, very cool. Yeah, I've been working on which hoping to get this released this year or this quarter, I should say. I'm sorry. We're doing an annual InfoSec report, so kind of a
Yeah,
state of the union report, we're calling it, and we're pulling a lot of statistics from data points that we have through our work, from assessment data through engagements, and then we're going to wrap it up with a story from the incident response team as well. So we've been busy pulling tons and tons of data and organizing data, and now trying to put together the narrative that hopefully is going to be educational and helpful for all of our listeners out there. And so I'm super excited to
yeah, I
be
can't wait to
making
see
good.
that.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. These are things like we have just such a wealth of information here and a wealth of knowledge, and I think it's kind of our duty to make sense of all this for all of our community, and contribute back and share this information so we can all learn, like, where are we winning together, where are we failing together, how does that relate to real world incidents and attacks, and what should we really be focusing on right now to help improve our own security postures and just
Yeah,
prevent those attacks and also prevent the damage from the attacks.
right.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
a big initiative we've been working on right now, is like, um, as we socialize with our clients and just other people in the industry and potential clients and businesses. Like, I learned that we could do a lot better at our instant response planning, right? Like, that instant response plan shouldn't just be a document that you create because some compliance standard says you create
right.
that. Let's understand what the value is and try to prove that value to people and help them understand, how do you really use this thing? Like, where do we find value from that? And it's really through making sure the right people have eyes on that document, making sure
Yeah,
you're doing those tabletops and simulations, so you're practicing and practicing and identifying your gaps beforehand, and you're gonna have the best chance to minimize that impact if and when you do have the incident.
yeah. Funny you mentioned that. I had uh, no names obviously, but a client had a business email compromise, and the attacker was in their system for under 2 hours before they caught it, kicked them, and reset passwords and everything.
That
So
is excellent.
right, yeah,
Hmm.
and yeah, I can't really go into much more, but it was
Right.
even then, as quick as they were able to, because they got that stuff. It was still like they were shaken by it. Like,
Hmm.
okay, what could we have done to fix it faster? What could we
Hmm.
have done to stop it? So yeah, even when
Yeah.
you have it, it's still going to always be a living document.
Yeah, and I've put out a blog article in the last month or so, kind of about that metric there. Everybody really likes to focus on the mean time to detect, right? And the mean
Mm,
time to detect is important, but more importantly is your mean time to respond or mean time to report, right?
right.
And so trying to flip that script a little bit. So maybe you have, and I think a lot of our listeners and a lot of organizations have that ability to detect in a short period of time. Not all things, obviously, but they do have the systems in place to improve that mean time to detect. But what's your true mean time to respond, or what's your
Yeah,
end user's true mean time to report if they've
right,
fallen victim to a phishing email or observed a phishing email and so on?
right.
And so it's super cool to see people like in that situation. I hate that anyone gets compromised, but to say, yeah, not only did we detect it, we responded and had the actor out of our environment within a couple of hours.
Yeah,
I love hearing those stories.
yeah, and they had all their high-profile targets reset passwords
Hmm.
like before the forensics was even completed, just to hey, finance executives, HR, anybody that has sensitive information, you're resetting your password.
Yep.
I was like, man, so proud of you.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Heck yeah. I mean, and those things go to show like we're making a difference, and that's all we want. We're able to influence our partners, our clients, our friends, everyone to try to be better and understand how to properly respond and what they should do in those
Yeah,
situations. And so, and that's one of your clients too, man. So kudos to you. I mean, you've helped them get to that point, and that's awesome.
yeah. It's the reward, right? That's why we do this.
Hmm. For sure. 100%. So speaking of incidents,
Yeah.
there was a pretty interesting article. You actually shared this with me, and we're talking about it a little bit. Where some ESET researchers essentially bought up some used network gear and said, "Hey, what can we find with this?" And
Hmm.
I was really happy to see that article because this is something that I'm sure we've all thought about for years. We've all been part of these
Oh yeah,
processes too for data for equipment retirement, and I think this did a really good job of visualizing some risks that are involved with retiring network equipment
yeah.
specifically.
I mean, and they got IPsec and VPN credentials, hash root passwords. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, so yeah, let's
not
set
great.
this up, right? So what these researchers did essentially is went to a used market, secondary market, and they bought up a series of network devices that had been retired. So Cisco ASA 5500 series, Fortinet FortiGates, and Juniper SRX series gateways. And then they just said, let's take these devices in and let's just see what kind of data that we can scrape from these that may be valuable. And then leading to what Brad was saying there, tell us what they found, Brad.
Yeah. Well, like I mentioned, data to identify the former owner operator, 100%. All of them, they
Mm-hmm.
could identify who the owner was. IPsec and VPN credentials or hash root passwords, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
That's I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
Um, router to router authentication keys and connection details for specific applications, 89%. Credentials for connecting to other networks,
Mm-hmm.
44%. And data third party connections, 33%, and customer data, 22%. So,
Yeah.
like, wow.
Yeah, it's and I'm not surprised, right, by this. This is a
No,
great study, but it's just like I said, good at visualizing something that we've been thinking about for a while.
yeah, I'll be honest. I was surprised the data to identify the former owner and the IPsec or the credentials on every single one.
Hmm. Well, you think about this though, that like what's step one if you were ever in a network admin, right? It's, you build your config, you put your disclaimer in that config, like
Yeah,
notifying people this is for authorized use only or authorized access only, and you put in your owner details so you know who manages
right.
this device.
I
So
know.
everyone does
How does nobody wipe? Like, how did nobody wipe it?
right.
That's
And,
what blows my mind.
yeah, and I see that happen. I mean, I've seen it before, and like
Oh yeah,
so, and there's a lot to unpack here with this, right?
yeah,
Number one, yeah, like we maybe we just talk about that. Like, what should you do with your network devices when you're going to retire them, right?
yeah. I mean, factory reset, right?
Right. First, have a policy though, right? Let's have a
Well, yeah,
policy and
yeah,
a procedure in place. Like, let's
yeah,
make sure we're documenting we have an equipment retiring process. And
yeah,
then in that process, yeah, let's make sure that we have documentation for how we actually cleanse this device. Now,
yeah.
and there's two like things I think about with this, right? So, one, like, what did you do? I mean, you've been a sysadmin before, like hard drive destruction. What did you guys do, right?
Yeah, we did a digital wipe pass,
Yeah,
overwrite, and then had him shredded and got a
yeah.
certificate of destruction.
Yeah, we shredded the drives. I even worked at a spot too where we had a drill press and we would drill our drives, make them look like Swiss cheese when we were done using them, right? So we manually destructed those drives. Now, and I think about like with network equipment, I think that's why we're kind of in this situation. It's a little harder to do that with network
Yeah,
equipment, right? And so, like a lot of the older Cisco devices did have like the removable NVRAM chips, right? And
mm,
so you could easily pull those, pull your volatile RAM, and then pack the device away and probably be okay. But newer devices don't have that opportunity to just eject that storage. A lot of
right.
people don't even really know where this. So, and you could get into a situation where it's like, hey, let's just literally Swiss cheese the board in this device and it'll never work again. Make sure we hit the non-volatile RAM and the RAM as well. But then again, like I get into like responsible environmental practice and
Right.
sustainability, right? And so I can't really fully support that because there's so many like precious minerals and
Oh, right.
non-recyclable minerals that are in there, that if they're in there also is so many people that could use that device that can't afford modern
Yep.
equipment. So I can't justify in my head, let's just physically shred these network devices, right?
Yep.
I think we should responsibly reuse those devices. And so for me, yeah, it goes back to like what you're saying. Let's just have a policy that, um, you know, very clearly defines what wiping that device means, you
Yep.
know?
Yeah, I agree. And,
Yep.
not just network devices. The other one that we see a lot of people not thinking about is multifunction, right?
Hmm.
Let's have hard drives in them for storage. And,
Hmm.
you know,
Oh yeah.
people don't, they're still surprised when you bring that up. It's like, no, you need to account for that. And
Hmm.
same exact thing could happen.
Yep.
It's everybody thinks servers and endpoints, but it's all those other things that store
Yeah.
data that could come back and bite you.
100%, man. It's so like, another thing too is I was just thinking about this a lot where, okay, you could just swap the config, right? Just swap the config and move on. Well, then we have that opportunity. We know like how data storage works, right? And sometimes it is possible to recover that data. Um, so you have to do multiple wipes. I would load a factory config back on there, wipe it again. And kind of, like the old DoD standard, I think was 7 wipes, right?
Yeah.
To fully cleanse a disk. And so I think you have to implement a similar process for your network equipment, whatever the DoD standard is, but 7 wipes on that disk to ensure there's no residual memory left behind that could be recovered by an attacker. But also, too, let's like really think about this. Um, if you're wiping that, you're putting that first line of defense up, and you're
Mhm.
making it more difficult to recover that data. So everything subsequent to that's just going to add to you securing data from
Yeah.
accidentally being shared on those devices.
Right. Yeah. And my guess is if attackers are getting this, they're looking
Hmm.
for the ones that are not, like if it comes up with a factory, they're probably just moving on.
Yeah, I would think so as well.
So
Um,
yeah, that's a
yeah.
good first step.
And then the other thing I was thinking about is sometimes too, if you just swap those configs, it's not enough because the VLAN database and your other network databases
Mhm.
can be stored separately from the config. So you have to make sure you're whopping any network databases that exist as well as part of that. And then even some private keys, like those private keys won't be in the configuration, but those private keys will be stored on the non-volatile RAM as well. So make sure you're deleting the keys, you're deleting the RAM, or the config, and then you're deleting any other network databases or VLAN databases that exist on that network device, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You just gave everyone their procedures.
There you go. So write it up. But so this, like, I got to thinking about this, right? And so, and like I have a friend who works for an e-recycler. And this is part of a lot of e-recyclers business is they'll get a certification. There's a couple out, it's like R2 certification or e-stewards, to say, hey,
Mhm.
we're certified in e-recycling. But part of e-recycling isn't like, we think of taking aluminum cans to the recycler,
Right.
right? Well, they get melted down and reused. But part of e-recycling is responsibly reusing that equipment. And so they do have the ability to take that equipment, service equipment, then resell that equipment to someone else. Now, it gets questionable, like if those technicians or those e-recyclers actually care about sanitizing the data first, or
Right.
if they have the skill set to actually sanitize those systems. And so I don't trust that. I mean,
Right. Well, and I mean, ultimately, buck stops with you, right? If you're the
mm-hmm.
network admin and your data gets leaked, it's not those e-recyclers that are going to have to answer for that. Yeah. Yeah. I could hear. I heard most of it. It was a little bit. Uh, oh, it says you need to refresh the page. We'll see what happens here. This is a first. But yeah, so just kind of talking while we're waiting for Oscar to get back. Uh, it really is important. regardless of the device, it's your device, it's your company's information. So really make sure that that you take that seriously. And welcome back, Oscar.
Yeah, I'm back. It looks like my camera has froze, so I'll be audio only from here on out.
Oh, it's staring at me. All right.
Yeah. So the other thing I was thinking about with that, right, is what kind of responsible recycling programs do the vendors actually have, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
I did look into, and just these three vendors that are called out in this article: Cisco, Fortinet, and Juniper. And I wanted to see like what their if they had any services to take your old hardware back in to responsibly make sure that they're recycling those or repurposing those devices, maybe have a process to sanitize the devices and so on, so you can ensure your data is secure. And then what I did was I looked at beyond those three companies and their policies for returning old equipment, the actual number of devices available to buy on eBay. And it
Mm.
was pretty stinking interesting, man. So Cisco has a pretty awesome program. It's called the Take Back and Reuse program. It's
Okay.
free. They've got an app that you can use, and literally all you do is open your app and you just say, "Hey, I got an old device I need to retire." They're like, "Cool," and they'll set you up to be able to send that device to them, where they responsibly recycle that device or reuse that device, right? And they do have some
Wow.
sanitization built into that and everything, so it's super easy to do that. Then I looked at Fortinet, and I don't see any program. They have nothing about what to do with your old equipment. They say they they support environmental responsibility and proper recycling and all this, but there's
But
no program to take your
hmm,
devices back, right? And then I looked at Juniper, and Juniper does have a product reclamation and recycling program,
okay.
and they tout it can complies with WEEE, which is the Waste Electrical and Electronic Equipment Program standards. But to send the device back to Juniper, you actually have to open a case with them. And then you
Oh,
work that out. So Cisco's the easiest. They've got a super sweet, easy tool to send their stuff back. Juniper, they got a program, maybe a little more cumbersome to send that back. Fortinet, who the heck knows? Now,
wow.
when I looked on eBay, check this out. Cisco, the easiest to return, had the lowest number of devices for resale on eBay.
Hmm.
Juniper was right in the middle, and the most devices for available for repurchase
Yeah.
used on eBay was FortiGate by a long shot. There were 173 Cisco 5500 series ASAs for under $200.
Wow.
Um, Now compare that to FortiGates. There were 307 FortiGates under $200, and some of those were as cheap as $12. You want to start harvesting data? Buy yourself some FortiGates for $20 on eBay
Yeah.
right now.
Well, I mean, it makes sense, right? You make it easy and they get done correctly. It's not through eBay where anybody can do it, right? They've
Right.
got the program in place, so
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
interesting.
100%. I think this is like a call out to all of our equipment manufacturers. You should have a responsible take back and reuse program, because it would help in so many things. Improper disposal and waste. Like I know that there are some probably shops who don't even realize that you're supposed to go through an e-recycler. Those things end up in the dumpster. That's no good for anybody. We don't want this
No,
stuff in our landfills, right?
right.
Um, and so I think that our manufacturers, our product creators need to be a little more responsible in creating those programs to get those old devices back so they can be reused for people who can't afford modern equipment or the newest equipment. And then also, if it's out of service, like take a little bit of responsibility in helping make sure that that device and those materials that are used to create that device are properly disposed of.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, it's my soapbox for today, man. I thought it was pretty crazy though when I started digging into the return and reuse and
Yeah,
realized like it directly correlates to how many devices are available on the
yeah.
secondary market.
I mean, it makes perfect sense.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. All right. So in a nutshell, everybody, make sure when you're disposing of devices, you're not just considering your servers, your disk storage, and so on. Include those network devices, include your multifunction devices. Essentially, all your OT should be considered and treated the same way as you would of disk storage or server storage destruction.
Yep.
Have a policy, put it in place, do it.
Make that process easy to understand.
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
Don't just say wipe it. Tell them
Yeah,
how
right.
how you do it.
Cool, man. So a couple other, I think, things we want to hit on real quick.
Yeah,
You want to tell folks about the AuKiller?
yeah, that was crazy. So AU kill EDR killer malware uses Process Explorer driver. So it's basically using an out of date and exploitable, driver. Uh, was it? Looks like it backstabbed in 2021, but it's then killing your EDR and stopping it from restarting.
Yeah.
So it's yeah. So what is it? Process Explorer or process proc exp.sys release 16.32 into the system 32 drivers path. Um, the current legitimate one is proc exp 152.sys and is in the same location. It's it's a valid Windows tool, right? Like you can't just block those tools. There is a reason you need them, but maybe blocking rights to that new file creation in that folder as from unknown might be a good idea. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean the big thing on this one to me is it relies on an old version of Proc Explorer. It's Proc Explorer is built in, everybody uses it, it's in your system. It's going to be there if you're running in a Windows OS, but it's on that 16.32 or earlier. Our current version is over 17. It's like 17.04. So this is versions and versions old, right? So
Yeah,
patch your systems. Again, it's all
make
about
sure
the
it's clear about.
basics.
Yeah,
Yeah. And then the other thing too is to keep in mind is like this does require privilege escalation to have already taken place. So they have to have admin privileges to be able to successfully kill your EDR using that procmon, a process explorer,
yeah.
sorry, exploit. And so, and yeah, and like when I see this, it's like, man, this is a new play on an old technique because we've been seeing people trying to kill EDR, trying to kill AV for as long as I've been working
Oh yeah,
cases. And so, but this is a good lesson. Like that's not going away, right? So,
right.
in this case specifically, what is your best prevention? It's to patch your systems. I have seen some other techniques like this too that don't rely on, the Windows drivers or Windows services to be able to kill the EDR. But in the past, there actually has been some vulnerabilities specifically related to the EDR tool, where you could essentially bypass this, go straight through to the EDR tool, and essentially kill the EDR tool based on vulnerabilities in that piece of software itself. We're going to keep seeing this. It's not going away.
Yeah, yeah. And again, another reason why users should never be local admin.
For sure.
What was interesting to me on this one is so when it's executed, it checks to see if it has admin rights, and then it also requires that the attacker run the file with a keyword or password as the first argument on the command line.
Hmm.
But it's going to be, you couldn't just run it, right? You're going to have to do some stuff,
Right.
especially from a forensic investigation. A lot of times you can run them and blow it up and see what it does. Well, this isn't going to do anything if you don't have the right password.
Hmm. Yep. Yeah, there's some steps to get here for this to be successful for sure.
So not the
Yeah.
worst, not the worst of them, but definitely not what you want to see.
Yeah, for sure. The other one's kind of here. We got it's like a PSA, right? There was an article came out within the last couple of weeks stating that Cisco routers are being exploited by Fancy Bear, which I'm not going to say for sure, but a lot of people believe that's a Russian military intelligence APT. Uh, and so essentially, yeah, they're exploiting Cisco routers to gain access. Their exploit harvests the configuration data and the databases on the router itself while also giving them a backdoor channel to directly access that router. And this one just makes me shake my head, man. It's a 6-year-old vulnerability related
Oh
to
my gosh,
SNMP
I
and
know.
Cisco. 6 years old. So two things. Number one, like if you don't need, let's not make SNMP a publicly available port to begin with on your
Right,
Cisco router. Let's kill that. And then also let's patch more than once every 6 years. Let's update that Cisco device more than once every 6 years. And then this is a non-issue.
right. I mean, and these are internet facing. devices. Yeah, you need to get those up to date. What do you think? How do you think they're
Yeah,
going to get in?
right. And like I talk about this, we see this so much, man. FortiGate, vulnerable FortiGates, vulnerable Cisco devices, where there's these edge devices that are severely behind in software updates, severely behind.
Hmm.
And I just can't figure out why. I know that, and well, I think I know why. We look at Windows OS patching, right? It's gotten really, really easy for folks to deploy those patches. So we're having a higher success rate in that market. But I think that a lot of companies, especially smaller companies and medium sized businesses, they may hire someone to come in, deploy their Fortinet device, and just assume they're properly managing it because it's a managed
Yep.
service, right? And they never really check it. They don't really worry about it. And I think on the flip side, people aren't as comfortable updating those devices for fear of breaking the network, breaking the configuration, because that's the way it used to be. I mean, in the old Cisco
Right.
days, man, I could tell you horror stories about doing OS updates and running out of memory, or
Right.
having a total rewrite in language and totally corrupting my configuration file and have to rewrite that. And so I think that mentality still exists, and old school folks especially are probably a little more hesitant to deploy those updated images to their network devices.
Yep.
um, but
I
man, we're
agree.
seeing this pop up so much. Like Fortinet's always in the news, SonicWall's always in the news. Now
Yep.
Cisco's always in the news. Like, let's just update those edge devices, treat them like you would every other device or application in your enterprise.
Yep. 100% agree.
Yep. Yep. All right. One quick
Next.
thing. Brad, you let me know this, like, but just so everybody knows, I know a lot of people are looking for LastPass alternatives due to the breach history of LastPass over the last 12 months. And there's another one hitting the market. And I like Proton Mail. So
Yeah.
Proton Mail is coming out with a password manager. You want to tell the folks about that, Brad?
Yeah. Proton Pass. Pretty
Yeah.
cool. I'm trying to find it because I didn't have that one. Where'd it go? There it is. They do have a free version, so that's awesome. They do have a pretty good record. They're saying it's, you know, um, end-to-end encrypted, so they never have access to the information, and the user key is required for decryption. And yeah, they seem to be, pretty good uh, history with Proton Mail and Proton VPN and some of the other stuff that they have. They do have um, iOS and Android app browser extensions. Um, you can use your Proton Pass's two-factor authenticator. So really sounds like something, if you're looking for an alternative, that's probably another one to keep in mind.
Very cool. And right now, it's not, it's in beta. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm trying to find that. I think it was coming out pretty soon. Yeah, it's currently in beta.
Yeah. So if you are already a Proton customer or you have a lifetime plan, you can get signed up and use it right away. And they're going to have
Yep.
the visionary plan. Those folks are going to be able to access it shortly. And so I'm sure they'll have a full rollout, hopefully in the next couple months here.
Yeah, it doesn't have. I don't see anything on it yet, but on a release date. But yeah, they're using strong decrypt hashing.
Yeah,
So good.
cool. Yeah, so I think you want to touch on the Log4j thing just really quick. I think we have to mention that today.
Yeah, yeah. So Sophos released their 2022 year in review of their incident response, and what they found was that 55% of the vulnerability exploits were either Log4Shell or oh my gosh, what was the other one? Now I'm drawing a
Log4j.
blank. Log4j. Is that what it was? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, which had both been patched.
Yeah. And I just thought that was, you
It's
know,
like,
interesting. I'm not surprised at all. And I think we talked about that on here. I've talked about it on the Hacklebox where,
yeah, I know,
um,
but
yeah, same thing if we go back like to,
oh, proxy shell and log4shell. That's what it
yeah,
was.
yeah, to the proxy shell stuff, the Hafnium attacks, all that. It was like, there's so many people that are compromised that don't know they're compromised. You don't
Yeah,
know this immediately. The attackers are going to gain that access. They're going to develop persistence, and they're either going to slowly use that and work around for a further encryption or data exfiltration event, or they're going to sell your access to another APT to come in for that ultimate goal. And this one was really funny because Brad and I were at a conference for a pretty big brand that everybody knows. And they had their panel of experts, and the panel of experts were talking about how a lot of vulnerabilities are overblown and it's not as
Mm-hmm.
big of a deal. We don't have to worry about the 0 days. We don't have to worry about these new vulnerabilities like everybody acts like. And he asked a question. He said, how many people in the crowd were affected by Log4j? Now, this was June of last year. This is
Mm-hmm.
pretty, short after that broke. And no one raised their hand. He said, see, perfect example. You guys weren't impacted by Log4j at all, and it was the biggest thing on the news. And I said, no, you're wrong. And I told the guy this. You
Yeah.
remember this, Brad? And it was like,
Oh yeah.
everyone has been affected. They just don't know they're affected yet
Right.
because they're either gaining persistent access, they're going to sell that access, and then go through the entire kill chain. And we're going to see in a year from now, there's a whole lot more people than realize that were affected by this. Then this
Yep.
report comes out, and it's like, I told you
Right.
so.
You
I
nailed it.
told you so.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You definitely. That was pretty funny when you
Yeah.
called them out.
And I
Yeah.
didn't say their name here just because I don't want to cease and desist. But
Yeah.
I think if people go back and listen to some episodes, you can figure out who it is.
Yeah.
All right. I think we had enough here for 1 week. Thanks everybody for joining us. Before we go, Brad, got any shout outs today?
Yeah. I'm gonna give shout out to Sadie, one of our project managers, who's really taken the reins on the BRM stuff and really made my life a lot easier. So shout out to Sadie. Good job.
Heck yeah. Yeah. Sadie's doing an awesome job. That's a really good one. I'm going to give a shout out, just to my old man. I got to go hang out with my old man last weekend. Did some fishing. I'm like a rock hound too. Did some rock hunting. Just kind of tooled around the woods and on the creek with my old man. Had a great day. And then everybody I think knows I'm a pretty big fisherman, and he also kicked my butt on the water. Caught a big monster smallie, and yeah, it was
Nice.
just a great day. And I'm just happy to see I get to spend some time with my family and see my folks in really good health right now. And I'm super thankful for that and thankful for them.
That's awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everybody. We'll be back soon. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Have a great day. See you.